Welcome. You're listening to the Beyond 50 radio program. We thank you for joining us. I'm your host, Daniel Davis. Joining us here on the program today, someone is going to share with us what I would call a journey of the miraculous. It's an opportunity where someone actually dedicates their lives to actually reach across and allow nature to come across and connect with them. And on our program today is author of a book, One with the Herd, and her experiences with a wonderful group of horses that she has on a farm in. And she's going to be talking with us today about this wonderful book. And I'd like to welcome to the Beyond 50 radio program today, Liz Mitten-Ryan. And Liz, thank you for joining us here on the program today.
Thank you, Daniel.
Now, this is an interesting book because, as I understand, that you're pretty much what is known as a horse whisperer. Now, a lot of people are familiar with that title, but kind of maybe rehash for those who aren't familiar with what a horse whisperer actually is.
Well, I guess in the movie context, like Robert Redford in the movie The Horse Whisperer, it is a person who connects to horses, can speak with horses, has a dialogue with horses. I really refer to myself as a horse worshiper because I've spent so much time in the company with my herd and begun to fully understand that all animals are spiritual beings. There is only one consciousness in all life. And when you fully understand that implication, whether that life has 4 legs and fur, or whether it's human and it has a larger cerebral cortex, it's that same connection to higher mind that flows through each and every one of us.
Now, it's interesting when you put it in that perspective because man, especially when it comes through, say religious teachings through the Bible, seems to have the misinterpretation that we're stewards of the earth as though we're supposed to be here and that we're in control of everything, when I really believe what was meant is the fact that it was understood that we could be more powerful, in other words, that we could actually interfere and that we should be able to restrain that back and learn and get our lessons from nature. And it's easy to see that through your book, as you talk about being spiritually connected, that your horses actually are spiritual teachers, and it's very profoundly true.
Well, what I've noticed, Daniel, is that animals are really no different than humans. Each and every one of us has our own unique and special truth to share with the world. And just as in humans, you have athletes and you have rocket scientists, you have, that whole cross-section, writers, artists, you have that in the animal world. And my particular herd of horses chose to be born into this place, and this is what they have told me through 4 books. The message just keeps getting thicker. They chose to come to be here as contemplatives. And the situation they're in is basically like a big ashram. They live on 320 acres. They're free to come and go at will. They're all one family. Their needs are looked after. They are loved and adored. And they have nothing to do but spend endless hours contemplating life and connecting on that higher level and translating that connection through me and through the books and the workshops.
Now, when I was reading your book, you show a really interesting genealogy, if you will, of your horses, and I wonder now, how did you come to have these horses in your company?
Well, my husband and I lived on a small farm before in Gibsons, BC, on 13 acres, and we raised 6 children. And as my children began to, fledge, I had always had a dream of having a farm with horses. And we had the odd animals as the kids were growing up. We had a couple of horses, and we forayed for a while in raising pigs and chickens and all those things. But it was an opportunity for me as the kids were moving on to actually really rethink the whole thing. And I thought, I'll breed horses. That will give me an opportunity to save money on my taxes and get into something that I really have always wanted to do.
Better than the AIG bailout also.
Well, it began as sort of a business scheme because I was looking for something. I did not want to raise my own meat. We tried that briefly, and we all became vegetarians. We got to know them too intimately. And as much as that probably would be the way you'd want to do it, to be conscious of the meat you're eating and to treat them kindly, it was just too close for us. And so basically all the girls in the family just said, forget it. We're not eating anyone we know. So then I thought, well, I will raise horses, and then I won't have to eat them. I can just, enjoy them, sell them, raise them beautifully and sell them to a good home.
Mm-hmm.
Well, very quickly I began to realize that I couldn't sell my children. So we started to accumulate more and more horses. My husband's kind of looking at me like, great business you got into there. And over time, and when we relocated to this remote acreage, and my husband and I basically told our kids, guess what, guys, you're fledging a little more quickly than you supposed, because we're moving to raw land, and we're living in a wall tent for 3 months. There's no room for you. Mm-hmm. So we changed. We made a drastic life change.
Now, I was going to say, Liz, that as I was reading through your book, One with the Herd, it's my understanding that the horses don't really stay penned up, that they have that freedom to just kind of roam.
They do. Yeah, they have a great big comfortable barn with a foot of sawdust. And it's much nicer than where we live because we're sort of beside and above the barn. But they have a big post and beam, wide open space barn with deep bedding and all the comforts they could ever enjoy. But the gates are open. And from there, they can go out and wander on this huge acreage. But funnily enough, they have developed a routine where they wander in about 6 every morning, and they come in and they lay down in their barn, and they eat out of their hay feeders, and they get their grain and their treats. And I play with them, and we talk, and we ride, and then off they wander again.
Mm-hmm. Now, when we were talking earlier, it was mentioned about, you were talking about the movie The Horse Whisperer, and I actually had the opportunity to review a video on what was known as at the time The Real Horse Whisperer, which was Monty Roberts. And it was pretty astonishing to see what this man discovered about horses is that they are group animals and that they live in cooperation and they have their own hierarchies, and that he was able to learn from those horses how that he could transfer that knowledge, that wisdom of how the herd operates as a group function, as a team, if you will, and he could turn that over to troubled young boys and actually turn their behaviors around to where they wanted success, they wanted better lives for themselves, they weren't getting in trouble anymore. And I'm sure that you've probably experienced that same thing within your own special herd.
Well, this is why our workshops have begun, because, horses now are used in therapeutic riding. They redirect neural pathways. So you can have handicapped children who sit on a horse, and all of a sudden they begin to articulate, they can speak, they can move their bodies better. It just brings something out. And the same in equine assisted therapy. People will go and learn to communicate truthfully with a horse, and that will spill over into all areas of their life. Mm-hmm. So the biggest gift that horses have to give us is what they have called equine truth. Mm-hmm. And that is absolute truth from its inception at the thought level to its reverberation in every fiber of the being. And if you examine that, you will never find an animal that lies, not any animal. They are absolutely always in their truth, whereas humans have this ability to cover up, pretend they're something that they're not, and therefore they're not finding what they want in life because they're not being themselves. So horses can teach people to be in their truth, because if you approach a horse with a hidden agenda, it's called, you're being incongruous. You're holding one thought, but you're appearing in another way, and the animal picks up on it right away.
Mm-hmm. And that's so true, too, because I know that for some strange reason, there was a little bit of a fear that was put into me when I was younger, and that is if you walk up behind a horse, you're going to get kicked. So I worry the thing's going to turn around and kick me. So even as much as I try to approach a horse and hold that fear down, it's sort of as though they pull their head back like, what are you doing? Why don't you just come
to me
and relax? So no matter how much you try to cover it up, they know it. That's the funny thing about humans is we could do that so well to each other, but with animals, you just can't do that at all.
Yeah, on one level, I don't think we do it very well to each other because don't you always know when someone is telling you a authority. You're
That's
just on that
absolutely true.
instinctual level, which animals reside on. We call it intuition in humans. But we all listen to our intuition to a greater or lesser degree. And those of us that do just know. But, it's pretty hard to call someone on it. It's pretty hard to say to your colleague at work, you're just out and out lying. Doesn't go over very well.
Yeah, it's that politically incorrect garbage that we all of a sudden came up with is another way of rationalizing, you're lying, and that's fine with me.
Yeah, exactly. So
now, I was going to ask you, Liz, have you always been an artist, or when did you first pick up the paintbrush?
Well, I think as early as I can remember, I knew that my life had to do with animals and art. Those were my two loves, and I was very, very young when I started to paint and draw, and very young my mom, I can still remember her taking me down to the local zoo to feed the animals. And I was probably 3 years old, and I just thought, oh, my goodness, there's nothing better in the world I want to do than feed animals, and that's what I'm doing today.
Well, the reason I wanted to bring that up for the listeners out there, we're talking with author of One with the Herd, Liz Mitten-Ryan, is the reason I brought up the artistry is because in the book you have not only a lot of wonderful photographs, but you also have the art that you did on horses, and it's so rare that you see somebody, it's to me what I see in your artwork, what you have painted of these wonderful animals is it's that their spirit came through you to the brush, and it's moving, it's alive, it breathes, versus, here's a horse in a field kind of a thing, if you understand what I mean.
Well, I've always sought to connect to an animal on that level. And years ago, I was a wildlife artist, and I painted almost every species of wildlife throughout the world, and the funds from the sale of it would go to conservation groups and to preserve areas and animals. So I wanted to show the animals, I wanted to show the soul of the animals. So I'd wind up painting a head-on view, whereas a lot of other artists would kind of paint that animal off in the scene. And some people, it really bothered them because when you're looking right into the eyes of an African lion and he's following you around the room, whatever I did, I wound up connecting to the point where all the animals would not only turn their eyes to look at you, they'd turn their heads. And you'd be on one side of the room and the nose and the eyes were looking right at you. And you'd be on the other and it would do the same thing. And it wasn't something I contrived. It was just a connection. And I even did it to a portrait of my husband. So, it's just wanting to connect on that level. And to me, it never made me feel uncomfortable. It made me feel connected.
Oh, just so amazing. Now let's talk about the horses that you talk about here in your book, because you describe them, and they're so individually different, but what they've consistently done is they've spiritually helped you grow, as you say. Let's talk about how all that started.
Well, interestingly enough, when I moved here and originally spent time, in a wall tent, the book tells the story of my husband and I changing our sane, safe, ordinary life. We raised 6 kids. We have a big family home. We had jobs. We had friends around. Then all of a sudden we moved to the middle of nowhere into a wall tent because we sold our house so quickly that we moved on to raw land and we had to build as fast as we could. So we wound up building the barn first, of course, and then our little place on it. But for 3 months, being alone in a wall tent, I had the opportunity to walk the land, to be with my herd, to really understand my animals as I couldn't when they were, in Gibson's down a driveway, and I'd go to the barn maybe twice a day, and I'd see little, tiny little snapshots of their life. Well, when it was just like Monty Roberts, when he went out and began following the wild herds, he began to notice their language. And over time you absorb their custom and their language, and you develop a relationship. So the reason the book is called One with the Herd, A Spiritual Journey, is because it's the journey I was taken on, being adopted into the herd. And, it goes so much further than just the body language. It comes to a point, and I don't know how many of the listeners have heard about 2013 and how, there's going to be a massive change in the world's consciousness. Nobody's really sure what it is about. Well, what the animals have told me it's about is that our vibration is slowly rising. And when you're in the company of nature and animals, they are resonating at such a high vibration that over time, it's just like a tuning fork. It's maybe tuning all of the instruments to the note of C. Well, where you are in this really raw, beautiful, undisturbed land with these amazing giant spirits, you're getting tuned. And gradually, you spontaneously begin to communicate. You get telepathic. So that's what happened to me over time. I was away from the human mass mind consciousness, so I wasn't listening to radio or newspapers or television. And I lost my connection to all those prompts that were given daily. Hey, you guys, you all got to believe this. Now we're believing that. So I was so far away from that over time I began to resonate with the animals' vibration and spontaneously, have the dialogue, communicate with them.
It's so interesting, too, because people always take what somebody else says, they move it around, and then before you know it, it becomes a belief. And, in this day and age, especially in the world of, call it commercial spirituality, if you will, you hear a lot of things out there about the law of attraction. But in truth, as you actually got involved, and as you say in your book, that you talk about the law of attraction in action, so it's more of the law in action. How have you seen, through what these animals have taught you, that resonant truth, and what kind of miracles have you experienced as a result?
Well, what has become really clear, and this is the main premise of The Secret of the Law of Attraction, is that what we believe, what we think, and what we speak, we create in matter. Although that got very complicated because people will go, all I have to do is say, I want a new bicycle, and it will appear, and then it didn't. So then they all got very disillusioned. But the fact is, every minute of every day, you're holding a belief about the world. And that has to be a consistent belief. If 1 minute you read something that says you should have this idea, and you go, yeah, that's a great idea, I'm going to do that. But then 2 minutes later, you've totally forgotten what that idea was. And that's what humans do. Sorry, that's my overline, I think. Anyway, we'll be prompted by one media to think this, and then another to think that, and they contradict each other.
Right.
So instead of holding one consistent understanding, we climb up 2 stairs, and then we go back 4. And then we climb up 2, and we go back 4 by that inconsistency. So what happened here was, this is just a far simpler plan in that I believe nature and animals help us resonate to a level where we connect with higher consciousness, where we have that, universal mind, universal wisdom. And basically, when you allow that level of communication to come through you, there's a plan far higher than you or I individually can understand, and yet that is our higher truth. And that's what's right for us, above and beyond everything. So instead of wanting a new bicycle or wanting a big car, I want what my higher self, what the animals call God, the All. I want what the All wants for me. And that's all I ask. I ask for that to channel through me, and then I'm open to the prompts. I'm open to the intuition, which is my lifeline to spirit. So
I was going to say, Liz, it's quite amazing when people get into, I guess, call it that level, where as they think, therefore it becomes real, and it almost seems too easy. It's almost scary sometimes. And I know that you have a really interesting quote in here, if I may share with the audience, and that is simply, if you were to let go of your concerns for self for even a moment, the boundaries being just a thought would disappear, then you would experience as we do. That, for a lot of people, becomes tremendously scary to realize that there are no boundaries.
Well, I think it's so liberating. I mean,
at the same time, exactly.
When you understand, well, it's actually when you remember, because I think anybody who ever has a life-changing experience, an epiphany, remembers. It's like, oh my God, of course that's the truth. That's where I came from. Because we are all higher spiritual beings who have chosen, this experience in matter. And before we came here, we were unlimited. And we are unlimited as we remember that. So, that whole idea of, the Course in Miracles and the Secret and all of that are these glimpses of memory that when we apply those to our lives, miracles happen.
And just to let people understand a note on this quote, this actually came from Premier Edition or Primo, which is one of the herd.
And I have to tell you this is so exciting. When I put One with the Herd, when I finished publishing, it was my very first book, I sent it out for Independent Publishing Book Awards. And it actually won 5 awards. Very first book, it was amazing. It won every Independent Publishing Award I applied for. Mm-hmm. Then this book 2, book 3, and book 4 came through in this big flood. And that was when the dialogue had started in book 1. The horses came to me, and Prima in particular came to me and said, I have a book to write, and will you write it for me? And I went, whoa, okay. And she literally gave me the title of the book. She gave me the table of contents. And then I'd be up painting away, doing my thing, and all of a sudden her face would appear between my eyes, and she'd be like, you said you'd do this. So I'd wash off my paintbrush, run downstairs, scribble, 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 and that became book 2 called The Truth According to Horses. Mm-hmm. And it is a handbook to life written by horses for humans. And it has so much profound material. It's like a Course in Miracles. It's like you need a guide to the Truth According to Horses to fully pick up all the information in the book. And some of the quotes that she gave me are actually in book 1. So I think that one you read came out of a chapter in book 2. Mm-hmm. Anyway, so I applied. These are all up on Amazon. I applied for book prizes for the next 3 books. So I'm basically competing against myself because I put 3 books out in 1 year. Who won was Prima's book, The Truth According to Horses, and it won a Nautilus Award. And the Nautilus Awards are the most coveted book awards out there. People like Deepak Chopra and the Dalai Lama and Eckhart Tolle have won Nautilus Awards. And now my horse. So I went, wow, that's got to be a first. They recognize, this book as a Nautilus winner. So.
Well, very good. Congratulations. It's quite interesting to know. We wonder, what will come up next. Something from a tiger, a disappearing breed. You just never know.
I totally think there's more and more animal communication going on all the time. You hear about them, on television, Animal Planet. I mean, they have their resident, animal communicator on there all the time.
I think the most wonderful thing, too, that your book communicates and what we're talking about here when you talk about Animal Planet and the healing power of animals in nature is that they teach us that all these things that we think are so dadgum important are usually small things that we worry about. And that if you could just step back and you can just quiet things down and slow your pace down a little bit, that you'd realize that a lot of these things that we worry about are all very small things and it's just not necessary.
Well, when you look at it from, say, the end of your life perspective, and you've had everything, you've done everything, and who are you, and what do you have to take with you, into the afterlife? And those are the important things. Those things that make us spiritually wealthy are what we take with us. Mm-hmm. So that's what the horses teach. Can I read you one? I'll read you one concept from Truth here. I was just trying to find it. This is written by my horse, Epona, and she's the daughter of Prima. And what the horses did is the first 10 chapters were written by Prima, and then we examined concepts and how animals view concepts as opposed to how people do. So there's things like truth and trust, and this one is poverty. And Epona came forward and she said, I would like to talk about poverty. Poverty is the greatest gift and something horses reside in. It has a purity, an absence of attempt that allows us freedom to resonate with our higher truth. Imagine people living without things, no clothes, no laundry, no house, no cleaning, no material possessions, no worry. It's a gift of immeasurable value, and in our wisdom, horses have chosen this way of life. We are fed, groomed, and cleaned up after, and we have hours of free time to commune on a higher level. You would do well to examine the idea that the less you own, the easier your life, and the more quality time you have to address important issues, like obtaining attributes that are incorruptible and eternal. Pretty simple, eh?
Very simple. In fact, I was just about to point out that there's a lot of times that we'll do shows and we try to talk about abundance, and of course it usually goes hand in hand with the acquiring of money. The one consistent truth of why a lot of people feel that they want to be rich is that they want this security they believe it's going to bring for them. Well, when in fact, can you imagine the security that you have when you really know that you have nothing to lose?
Mm-hmm. When you are connected to the all and all your needs are met. If you look at how nature is provided for, and then we humans have somehow walled ourselves off from nature, and we are getting further and further away from that connection that we used to have when, we were tribal and, we lived out and we communed with the earth every day. Now we're so far removed from it, and we live on concrete, and we live in, microwave radiation cities, and, we're just losing that.
Well, perhaps that 2012, 2013 will change that, and we'll see a nice vibration of consciousness that will let us be aware of how much we've restricted ourselves from remembering, as you said earlier in the program.
Well, it's like that 100th monkey. I'm sure everybody's heard about the tipping point or the 100th monkey theory.
Okay.
It's like what Prima says is you and I can change the world one mind at a time, and that's the only way the world changes. So if one by one people's consciousness starts to change, and my consciousness affects 100 other people's consciousness, and those 100 affect thousands, it will be exponential, and eventually it'll reach that tipping point, that point where 51% of human mass mind consciousness understands something, and then our entire consciousness changes. It's like we all believed the world was flat at one point. All of a sudden, something happened. We went, oh, wrong. Now we believe something completely different.
Amazing how herd mentality actually works, but it's sad when the herd is being led by perhaps a misled leader, so to speak.
Oh, I know. It's scary what we're fed every day. It's all doom and gloom, and I don't listen to it. My husband connects in. He reads his Guardian weekly. And I try never to look at it. If I ever even skim the front page, I'm like, oh, what am I doing?
Yeah, news can be highly aggravating, isn't it? What's even worse about it now, it seems, is the fact that when you actually listen to a news broadcast is that they don't really say anything anymore. It used to be about, well, this is what happened, an objective view, but now they really don't say anything anymore, and it's quite amazing that people just interpret, because that's how I think the news is being fed to people. It's left up to interpretation. This is what we said without any accountability or any responsibility. And I wonder to myself, what would it be like for us if we would step away from the idea that our mass consciousness is teaching that we could say whatever we want, we don't have to be responsible or accountable legally because what you interpreted is not what we said. Now, on your farm, you do allow people to come and to help out? Is it sort of a cooperative type place?
No, that has happened in the past.
Okay.
What actually happened was when the book started going out, I was getting emails from all over the world and people saying, can I come? I really want to see how this happens. I really want to experience it. So I had a series of mostly, for some strange reason, guests from Great Britain. And one would sort of bring the other. They'd go back. They'd go to a self-help group, meet someone else, say, oh, my God, you got to go. And through that experience, the last girl to come over, Victoria, was a 30-year-old civil engineer. And she reached, a point where she just looked at her life and went, what am I doing? I hate this. My parents told me I had to get an education. This is what I've got. I hate my day-to-day job. So she emailed me and said, could she come? And I said, sure. And so she helped me because she was a horsey person, and she could, help me with the horses. And I exchanged, the visit. And she stayed for a month, and then she wound up staying for 6 months.
Oh, wow.
And as the more she spent here, the more she was communicating with the animals, and she started to spontaneously, talk to trees and have this other whole level of experience as well.
Wow.
And that's how the workshops came about, because Victoria and I sort of got together and we thought, Christopher Howard over there in England and Tony Robbins, they're doing all these self-help workshops in auditoriums. But the land here is so powerful that in itself, if someone were to just come and be on the land, the crystals and all the power of the land itself totally realigns and heals. And then you're in the horse energy, which takes it one step further. So we decided we would also have some very powerful practitioners here and invite people to come to the workshops. So that's where it has evolved to. So this summer there's 5 workshops over the summer, and it's all up on site. It's all up at lizmittenryan.com, anybody who wants to have a look. But we call them life-changing workshops, and we are going to take people through that connection, that reconnection, and that communication with the earth, with the land itself and with the animals, so that they can have these epiphanies and experiences and reconnections.
Now, Liz, through your experience with your wonderful animals and people who are coming to the farm and they're sort of having, I guess, call them reawakenings or true awakenings, what have you learned from your horses about letting go, especially when you realize that what you're holding on to is meaningless? And how does one finally understand, once they have let go, to see what their divine path is?
Well, it is just so amazingly liberating when you finally find it. Mm-hmm. It is such a gift that you would not exchange for any amount of money, for any amount of material possessions. It's a lifeline. It's knowing that ultimately your only thing that you can take with you is who you spiritually are. Mm-hmm. And your only life-giving connection is to God or the all, as the animals call it. So that's the very most important thing we should be doing here. We're given this opportunity. We're given this brief window here on the earth plane to explore and to grow and to do something wonderful for God. And we've all volunteered for it, but then when we get here, the matter is so thick and heavy, and it's just, it's such a huge exercise to get back to that point where we understand that one basic truth. And many people avoid it their whole life because they're so busy in the rat race doing what they've been told to do. Make a good living. Don't listen to anybody else. You got to do this. You got to do that. Well, wrong. I don't think any of us have to do anything. I think our biggest thing we need to do is connect to that higher self within us, which is our truth, and to find our heart's desire, because it's in that we do something truly miraculous and wonderful for the earth and for ourselves. Other than that, we're just putting in time.
So just imagine the inherent wisdom as a person is on the back of one of these wonderful animals, full gallop out there on an open plain, and you say to yourself, as the wind is blowing through your hair, there are no boundaries anymore. Bring that horizon to me. And for the first time, you feel the true joy of what it means to be truly happy. Liz, I'd like to thank you so much for joining us here on the program, and please go ahead and give out your website again.
It's just my name, Liz, LizMittenryan.com. And once you get there, you can go to the media room. Go look at the videos, because there's videos in there, one with the herd, will show me interacting with the horses and the land and the freedom. And Wooly Bully is the funniest video you're ever going to see. It's my little steer who I adopted. He's now a year old, and he follows me everywhere like a puppy dog, and he does everything the horses do. And I've shown that to, I can't tell you how many cowboys and horse whisperers, and they just get hysterical. It's really cute. So
I know I was going to say one of the cutest pictures that I've seen in your book is the one with the grandson laying there on the bed. You've got 4 or 5 dogs laying around him.
And in the video, the kids come in, and they just come into my paddock with all these ginormous horses. And right away they gravitate towards the foals, and they grab the foals, and they say to them, we're going to have a kids club. And none of those big guys are invited to join us. And so they all just sit down in the middle of the paddock. And the big horses are kind of around them, but can't get any closer. And the babies, they just have this big hug fest. It's adorable. And, that is how my animals respond to people. They trust them, they love them, they connect with them, and they share their wisdom. So it's all up there. And if you want to read inside any of the books, you go to books, you click on the book title, and you can read probably half the book on site. So you can get an idea if the message resonates with you, if you're interested in it. And the workshops are up there, slides, everything. My son is fabulous on the computer, so he put this really elaborate site up.
Oh, well, very good. The book is One with the Herd. Our guest here on the Beyond 50 radio program, Liz Mitten-Ryan. And Liz, thank you so much for sharing the wisdom of your horses.
Thank you, Daniel, and thanks for all those wonderful questions you asked.
Well, thank you very much. And take care and get out and find that horizon coming to you, would you?
Right. Thanks, Daniel. Bye-bye.
Okay, again, the website, folks, is lizmittenryan.com. If you just feel that, hey, you're just not connecting and being who you are, here's an opportunity to allow the animals to show you how. lizmittenryan.com is the website. Wonderful book, One with the Herd. I want to thank you for tuning in. You've been listening to the Beyond 50 radio program. Be sure to visit us at our website at beyond50radio.com, the number 5050. Sign up for our free weekly e-newsletter. Also visit us at our blog, where you'll find all this in multimedia information and wonderful access. And also, we encourage your questions or comments. Just simply shoot me an email, daniel@beyond50radio.com. I'm Daniel Davis. Again, thank you for tuning in today. And remember, live your day past halfway.